What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rovardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the Giants have done some reconfiguring on their offensive line throughout training camp over the past few weeks. We've seen some turnover at a couple positions here, and I think we're seeing a position battle at 3 starting roles on the Giants' offensive line right now. So today, we're going to go ahead and break down these position battles and kind of project what the New York Giants' starting offensive line might look like once we get to week 1 of the regular season. Now, keep in mind, we're seeing a lot of Matt Peart right now with Evan Neal, right tackle, in the concussion protocol, but we assume he should be locking down that starting job. That's his to lose, and honestly, I don't even think he could lose it, even if he tried. But we all know Andrew Thomas. He's Moneyball at the left tackle position, continuing to establish himself as maybe the best left tackle in football. But again, those 3 interior offensive line spots up for grabs. We're going to go ahead and break them down in today's episode. But before we do all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on this New York Giants offensive line?
I'm doing great, man, and I'm excited. I think that we finally have at least a group of players that will compete for their jobs, that will earn their jobs. I mean, kind of across the roster at this point, like, you're starting to get the feeling that the Giants aren't just handing out starting jobs anymore. They actually have the talent to compete there. You look at slot corner, like, you know, it's best anyone could win that job. I mean, I'm favoring Cordell Fly. I think most of you guys are, but who knows what could happen? You know, like the cornerback slot, like who saw Trey Hawkins coming? Receiver, there's so many names to count. It's really a great thing to see this team has built enough depth up where some of these guys are actually graduating to starting gigs, and you kind of look at Jason Pinnock, another guy, you know, it's an episode we're going to have to record shortly on how he's winning the starting job there. We didn't talk about him at all during the offseason. We were thinking about Dane Belton. We were thinking about, you know, Bobby McCain. We were thinking about other guys, and, you know, Jason Pinnock apparently comes out of left field and suddenly is going to be our starting strong safety. So it's nice to see that we have a lot of depth and a lot of young players with athletic upside that can actually fill these jobs. Now, the offensive line is no different. We know that Andrew Thomas is locked down at left tackle. For what it's worth, that video of him burying Kayvon Thibodeau, like that, you watch Andrew Thomas, you want to watch a top left tackle go after a really good pass rusher and just destroy them, watch that video. It's ridiculous. And then in the interior of the offensive line, you have a lot of draft picks from the Giants, obviously John Michael Schmitz, and, you know, he's probably locked into the center job. I think we can assume that. Ben Bredeson's been kind of moving around. We're going to talk about him, what his role might be. Josh Azudu is a draft pick from last year at UNC. Good player, you know, a lot of upside there. Mark Lewinsky, like, what is his role? Like, there's a lot of positions that are kind of up for grabs. We're going to give our best options and our best takes at projecting this starting 5, really starting 4, really starting 3, because you have Evan Neal starting at right tackle barring injury, and Andrew Thomas is locked up. So it's like really just as left guard, right guard, center spots that like could be a little bit open. So we'll discuss those. But Anthony, I'll let you take it away and let's start off at left guard. So we know Andrew Thomas is definitely going to be starting at left tackle.
Yeah, Andrew Thomas has that left tackle position locked down for several more years. I really loved that quote from Brian Dable recently where he said, you know, I like to think that every position on this team is open. And then one of the writers or reporters was like, even left tackle? He said, no, not left tackle. And then he laughed about it. I mean, yeah, that is Andrew Thomas's job for hopefully the next 20 years. I would love to see that happen. So we know that he's not going anywhere. But over at left guard, let's see what happens. This is going to be really interesting to watch how that position shapes out because we know what the Giants want to happen. They want Joshua Azudu, third round pick rather from last year, entering his second season. They want him to elevate his game and take that starting job. But will he? Can he take it away from the veteran Ben Bredeson? That's the question here. Now, we know that Ben Bredeson was rotating in that position, was the primary starter there last year, but rotated in and out of it with Azudu, with Nick Gates, and honestly, in my opinion, of those 3 players, Ben Bredeson looked the best and gave the Giants more meaningful snaps than the other 2. And I think when you're looking ahead to this upcoming season, the Giants can play this one of 2 ways. Do they go with the reliable veteran that has a higher floor but a lower ceiling? Or do they run with the young guy whose ceiling is really high? We got to find out what his potential is, and maybe they'll look at it as throw him into the fire and let him develop during the regular season. Now that's possible, but the argument against that would be you need some reliable players in front of Daniel Jones, some reliable players opening rushing lanes for Ben Bredeson. You cannot just throw a guy out there to develop, get eaten up by the Wolves out there during the regular season when every snap counts, and you need everybody on their A game in order to get Daniel Jones and this offense running properly. So again, it's going to be really interesting to see how it shapes out here, but I think the preseason is what's really going to determine what the Giants do at left guard, because Ezeudu, let's say he goes in as the starter at left guard this upcoming Friday against the Detroit Lions. Maybe he goes out there, 0 sacks, 0 pressures given up, just totally dominates. Well, that's going to bode well for him as he tries to win the starting job. But then again, let's see how Ben Bredeson plays, as he's been kind of moving all over the Giants offensive line in recent weeks. They've had him taking first team snaps at left guard, at center, at right guard. He might be their do-it-all everyman, similar to how Nick Gates was for this team for the last several seasons. If you all remember, Gates started off his NFL career as a right tackle for the Giants, then moved to right guard, then played some left guard, then locked in a starting job at center for the Giants, and then moved back to left guard. He was a guy who could be your backup at all 3 of those interior positions, and the Giants don't necessarily have that right now unless Ben Bredeson can get up to speed, prove that he can play all 3 of those positions, and establish himself as that everyman. But until then, they're going to keep battling out for that starting left guard spot, and I'm pulling for Ezeudu. I really like him. I think he can be a mauler in the run game in particular, and I think he's got pretty good feet for a guy his size. So I want to see Ezeudu win that job, but ultimately, if he does struggle throughout the preseason, I'm not going to feel comfortable throwing him out there just because he's a young player that we want to see develop. I think the Giants need to go with who they can trust the most in Week 1, especially looking at that Week 1 matchup, debut against Dallas. We know they have a great defensive line, and we need Daniel Jones standing upright in that pocket. So, Alex, I guess, when you're looking at that battle here, I think you're on the same page as me, where it's not about the potential on this one, it's about the dependability.
Yeah, look, I mean, whoever's going to help Daniel Jones throw the ball well and protect him is who I'm starting. It's not even a question. Look, I know we could sit here and make the arguments that Josh Ezeudu should be starting because he has the upside and maybe he'll be better. But if Ben Bredeson has a better camp and he shows more consistency and during preseason he stands up and plays well, I'm not risking it. You just in the NFL, guys, you can't risk anything when it comes to your quarterback. You just can't do it unless you have no other choice. And these are the guys you have, and there's nobody better, and you got to go in that direction. Then you got to make that decision. But the truth is NFL in the NFL these days, if your quarterback goes down, you're screwed. You're done. Your team is done. You watch Chad Henne take over for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's bad. Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor. It's not even close. Tyrod Taylor's going to struggle. Whereas Daniel Jones, he's making good progress. We think he could be a really good quarterback for us. We know what Tyrod is, and I don't want to see what that looks like. I know you guys probably don't want to see what that looks like either. So, when it comes to the offensive line, you put the best 5 out there and you don't hesitate. You don't risk that, in my opinion. Now, looking at last year, Ben Bredeson, he had some good games. I mean, he played 621 total snaps. Played pretty much all of them, 581 of them at left guard, and he gave up 0 sacks and only 12 pressures in 621 snaps, guys. I mean, he was a good player. He had some really good pass blocking games. He had some good run blocking games. He was pretty solid when he was on the football field, and I think that right now, if I'm looking at what the best case scenario is at left guard in terms of the talent that we have and protecting Daniel Jones, I'm going in the direction of Ben Bredeson. Now, it seems to me, and I know you talked to Patricia Traina yesterday, and it seems like they're kind of considering Bredeson maybe a utility piece. You could have him at center, you could have him at right guard and left guard. They're moving him around the offensive line a lot during training camp, and I think maybe just in case they have to move him. Josh Ezeudu had experience playing left tackle at UNC, so there is an option there if they have no choice. But Ezeudu, it's basically his rookie season. He's 23 years old, he's young. He only played 290 snaps last year, guys. He barely played. He had a couple of okay games. He gave up 3 sacks and 15 pressures in a quarter of the amount of snaps that Bredeson played. So, you tell me, from an experience standpoint, from the standpoint of who's the better player right now, it's Ben Bredeson, and it's not even close to me, in my opinion. Now, if Josh Ezeudu took some really big steps forward this offseason and, he comes out and he shows some really good reps in preseason, I'm going to give him that opportunity. If they're okay, we feel like these guys are similarly graded right now, I'll go in the direction of Ezeudu because of the upside. But if they're this is not close, and Ben Bredeson just looks better, he has the experience, we trust him, I'm going in that direction at left guard. It's not even I'm not hesitating. It's about protecting Daniel Jones. It's about opening up the passing game. And think about the spin-offs of that. If Daniel Jones is protected and he's throwing the ball well, think about how much better the offense across the board gets. Saquon Barkley stays healthy because their passing attack is probably more prevalent, and you don't have to rely on the running game as much. Some of those guys Darren Waller, Paris Campbell, Sterling Shepard coming back from injury. Of course, you have Isaiah Hodgins and Daniel Bellinger. Like, all of these guys are going to get better. They're going to get more situated in the scheme, and the Giants can continue developing their offense as the season progresses instead of it being held back because our offensive line can't stand up and protect the quarterback. So, in my opinion, left guard right now, Ben Bredeson is the starter, in my opinion. However, if Josh Azuda looks really good and he takes steps forward and the coaching staff believes they're neck and neck, I'm going to go with the guy with more upside. What are you thinking right now in terms of who's going to win that left guard spot? For me, it's Bredeson for the time being.
No, I agree. I think that it's Bredeson, but as we go ahead and move forward here and dive into center and right guard, Bredeson's name is going to come up once again. So it's not necessarily that I think he's going to win that left guard spot. It's that I fear he may win another starting job and force Joshua Zedu to play that starting left guard position. So let's go ahead and move into the center spot here, because we all know who we want to see starting. We all know who's going to be starting, right? They haven't said it officially, and they're not going to say it officially, but John Michael Schmitz is going to be the starting center from week 1. The only way that he isn't is barring anything completely unforeseen, like an injury, or he just has the worst preseason of all time. But knocking on wood on the injury and also just playing the numbers game, this guy's not going to just fall flat on his face during the preseason. John Michael Schmitz is a high floor prospect entering the NFL, and he has looked good at training camp. He's gone 50-50 on some reps with Dexter Lawrence, which is a huge positive sign, and from everything that I've read, there's only been a couple missed snaps between he and Daniel Jones, a couple bobbles of the ball on the delivery, couple, mistakes here and there, but that's normal. Rookie growing pains, whatever you want to call it. It's his first time throwing snaps to an NFL quarterback with an NFL defensive lineman breathing on his neck. I can give John Michael Schmitz a pass for messing up a couple snaps during training camp. Now, if we get into preseason and he continues messing up the snaps, all right, let's open up this conversation a little bit further. Let's see if he is ready to make the start for week 1. But personally, I believe John Michael Schmitz is going to be ready for week 1. He's going to have a tough matchup in front of him. In fact, the Dallas Cowboys have a fellow rookie from this year's class on the defensive line that's going to be lining up right aside from John Michael Schmitz, and that's going to be a really fun and interesting battle to watch in week 1. But again, Schmitz is the man for that job. There's no way he loses it in my mind. The only one who could potentially take that job from him would be Ben Bredeson. I know that he has experience playing and starting at center in the past, and he's taken a lot of those first team reps, but primarily they have been going to the rookie John Michael Schmitz, and I think that it would be crazy if the Giants didn't put the second round rookie out there in week 1 as a starter. But Alex, I'm sure you're again in the same boat with me here talking about John Michael Schmitz, but when you've seen all of the clips of him and read all of these things about him competing with Dexter Lawrence and these other guys at training camp, I'm sure that you're getting excited about the idea of John Michael Schmitz opening up week 1 as a starter.
Oh my God. I mean, guys, as much as I do, it's been a long, really long journey at center for us. Billy Price and Matt Skura and who the hell, John Feliciano. I mean, we have been through the gauntlet at center, and people undervalue centers. I think they're one of the more undervalued positions. They not only, they're important for snapping the football, which is, pretty big part of just getting a play started, but the communication and the knowledge that a center has to have and the pre-snap information that they relay to the rest of the offensive line to the quarterback goes a long way. And I feel as though sometimes that goes underappreciated, and ultimately I feel as though the Giants are going to get a lot better because of this improvement at center. Now, John Michael Schmitz, they project him to be an above-average center at some point. He's a good enough athlete, high floor guy, really, really smart. A lot of people had him mocked in the first round to the Giants for good reason. His NFL comp is Ben Jones, good NFL center. That information that he's going to be able to provide Daniel Jones and the rest of the line is going to be really, really important. He has that dead ball snap, which I know they had one bad snap, but it was the first one out of multiple days of training camp. So far they've been really, really good in that regard. Every center occasionally has a bad snap. It is what it is. But so far they've showed pretty good chemistry between him and Daniel Jones. Now I'm most curious to see what's going to happen in pass protection. I know he's a solid run blocker. He can get out in front. He can get to the second level. I'm curious to see because some say he's a little undersized. I'm curious to see if he can hold his own. But I think he can. I think we've seen him against Dexter Lawrence, and nobody wins against Dexter Lawrence. But what I will say in the rep that I did see, that he reset multiple times. Like, if you're an NFL quarterback, like, you can move back, and if you can feel the pressure, like, you can maneuver around that. It wasn't like Dexter Lawrence just ran right through him. He was able to reset and push his body back and at least give the quarterback some time to, like, make a decision and do something. And ultimately, when you're going up against guys like Dexter Lawrence, like DeForest Buckner, like Aaron Donald, your quarterback has to react instantly. Like, you have no time you have no time to, like, change what you're going to do. Like, you have to react instantly, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. And I think that John Michael Schmitz gives the quarterback just a little bit extra time, at least from the rep that I saw. Again, really small sample size here, just what I saw from the one clip. But I think that his fundamentals are sound. He's a good player. He gets the game. He knows how to relay information. He's smart. I know Bobby Johnson tried to trick him at the pro day, and he completely he passed all the tests with flying colors. I think this is a long-term solution, guys. John Michael Schmitz. I mean, think about this. The Jets, they don't even know if they're going to be starting Joe Tippmann, who was drafted ahead of John Michael Schmitz. And I think they have Connor McGovern, who's like an okay center, maybe an average center. There's not even a debate here. Like, John Michael Schmitz is starting at center for us. And, like, if anything were to happen, I think Ben Bredeson's probably the second man up.
Yeah, I think that, again, and that ties into what we were saying with what Patricia Traina said yesterday in the episode that I recorded with her. Again, guys, if you haven't seen that, go check it out. She dropped a lot of good info. But in terms of Ben Bredeson being that everyman on the offensive line, if John Michael Schmitz, he's going to start the year at center, but if anything happens to him and he can't continue as the starter, that's where Ben Bredeson moves in, and now you have Joshua Zito at left guard, and you still have Glowinski over at right guard. Whether he opens the year as the starter at that position or not, he could be the backup. And again, I just think that it really does highlight how important versatility is on the offensive line when you have a guy like Ben Bredeson who can fill in at any of those positions. So, barring anything unforeseen, you've got a guy that you could just plug and play, and it opens up different roles for other guys on this team. So, for once, I feel pretty good about what the Giants have in terms of offensive line depth, which is something I didn't imagine I would be saying going into this upcoming season. But I'm happy that I could say that pretty confidently, at least about Ben Bredeson. But let's talk about that right guard spot, Alex, because that's one that we thought was a lock for Mark Glowinski. We didn't think there was any chance he was losing this job, but now maybe he is. Maybe Ben Bredeson is gunning for that starting right guard job. Now, one of the things with Bredeson is, yes, he can be that everyman. He can be that versatile backup offensive lineman that plays all those positions. But if he's one of your best offensive linemen, he can't be a backup. He's got to get his ass on the field. The Giants are going to have to find ways to put him into the starting lineup. But if Joshua Zito's playing really well, you keep him at the starter at left guard. How's Mark Glowinski performing? Because last year, he didn't perform too well, right? He struggled a lot in his first season as a New York Giant, and going into year 2, are we confident that Glowinski is going to turn it around and establish himself as a quality starter for the Giants? I'm not so sure. I have my doubts about that. And so now, reading through the training camp practice reports, Glowinski losing some of these first team reps, falling with the second team, while Ben Bredeson earns these first team reps, we could see a really unique here, not one that we predicted at the start of the offseason. We could see a unique offensive line configuration that has a left guard Joshua Zito, center John Michael Schmitz, and right guard Ben Bredeson. Alex, what are your thoughts on that starting three on the interior?
I mean, you know what? Ben Bredeson at right guard's an interesting conversation. I don't think that's the right move, personally. I think Glowinski is fine. Like, he's at the very worst, I think he's an average right guard, and you don't need all pro caliber guards to succeed in the NFL. Like, an average guard is actually fine if your tackles are good. So I feel like Mark Glowinski, and for what it's worth, people shit on Mark Glowinski, guys, but, like, let me give you some numbers here that probably you didn't know. He didn't give up a sack for the last, 7 games of the season. In fact, he barely gave up any pressures. He gave up, 1 pressure. There was a 5-week span where he gave up only 1 pressure in 4 of those games. In a divisional game against the Philadelphia Eagles, he had the best game of any offensive lineman on the team. He only gave up 2 pressures, and their defensive front was destroying us. Mark Glowinski actually finished the season really strong. It was the beginning to middle that was a little bit inconspicuous. I think he dealt with an injury at one point, and also he was trying to assimilate into a new offense that he didn't know, and Daniel Jones didn't know, and everyone didn't know. So at the end of the year, when he was starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, he actually looked pretty good. He gave up 27 pressures and 5 sacks, but a lot of those sacks came in the middle of the year. Really, really finished the season strong, had some good playoff performances. We all crap on Glowinski and talk shit about him because, he's not the best in the world, but I actually think he's serviceable, and I think that he got better as the season progressed towards the end. And I think that was a good sign toward him, finally assimilating into this offense and understanding his role. So I'm excited to see, if he can like kind of maintain that and like roll that good ending over into the 2023 season. So right now, like I'm not even thinking about Ben Bredeson as starting right guard. I'm thinking about him at left guard alongside Azudu, and if Azudu wins that battle, you have a really good depth piece who could fill in at any three of those interior positions, and that's where you want to be. Good NFL teams have depth at every spot. If Ben Bredeson ends up being our depth there, that is a phenomenal situation to be in. Like that is honestly the best case scenario is Azudu winning that left guard job, Glowinski winning that right guard job, and Bredeson just filling in because he's like an average at least offensive lineman, and I think him filling in any of those three spots and him being depth, like think about our depth in the past, guys. We didn't have any depth there. There was no one to even use. We were picking up guys off the street to play for us at some points. Having a player like this that can serve as a first option behind our starters, I mean, that in my opinion, that's the best case scenario. I don't think Glowinski's job is in danger at all. I think they actually like the way he finished that season last year, and I think they're going to try to roll with that into this upcoming campaign.
I agree with you there. I think that, the way that he finished the season so strong, if he can pick up where he left off in the regular season, then the Giants do have a really solid offensive line interior on their hands here with, hopefully Joshua Zedu takes that next step, can really take that starting job by the horns and thrive in that position. And then you have John Michael Schmitz, who we know has all the potential in the world at center. If Glowinski can just maintain that level of play that he left off with at the end of the regular season at right guard, and Bredeson can just kind of float in and out of these positions, I think that's ideal for the Giants. And keep in mind, for what it's worth, just because Joshua Zedu gets named the week 1 starter, if he becomes a starter at left guard, that doesn't mean that he's going to be taking all the snaps with the first team in the regular season. The Giants like to have a rotation there. It's a weird thing. Not a lot of NFL teams do it, but throughout last year, we saw a rotation at left guard. Even in the playoffs, the Giants were still rotating Ben Bredeson and Joshua Zedu at left guard, and Nick Gates as well. They just like to rotate it. And I think a lot of it has to do with matchup football, which if you guys listened to the episode yesterday with Patricia Traina, she kept bringing up that term, matchup football. You like to get guys out there that match up against their opponents, and sometimes you might have a skill set that you need Ben Bredeson for. You might need a matchup here where Ben Bredeson's skill set can give the Giants the best chance to succeed, and other times maybe you need that run blocking mauler in Joshua Zedu out on the field, so you rotate him in. It is very possible that the Giants, yes, establish one of those two players to be the starter at left guard, but they get pretty even playing time as they rotate in based on matchups. So I think that's something really interesting that Brian Daboll does. We'll see how it works this upcoming season if they implement that rotation once again. But yeah, just keep in mind that left guard spot, while someone might win the job, they're going to probably rotate those two guys in throughout the regular season, which should be something interesting to keep an eye on. But what a great breakdown. I'm proud of us, Alex. We did a great job there breaking down the interior of the Giants offensive line. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, right tackle, it's Evan Neal's job, but let's see how he recovers from concussion protocol. Hopefully he's back by the end of this week. We'd like to see him in this upcoming preseason week 1 game, but if not, hopefully he'll be out there in week 2. In the meantime, keep a close eye on Matt Parrott, who is fighting for that swing tackle job with Tyree Phillips. If you guys remember, again, Patricia Traina pointed this out in yesterday's episode. A lot of good info there. I'm telling you guys, go watch it. But Tyree Phillips was the backup last year while Matt Parrott was dealing with an injury on IR for the majority of the season. Now, what we're really seeing here, we're not seeing Matt Parrott fight for the starting right tackle job. We're seeing him play right tackle in order to fight for the starting swing tackle job, because right now that probably does belong to Tyree Phillips. So let's see how Parrott plays here. This is actually a really interesting little position battle that we have going on at swing tackle, and it's being played out at right tackle with Evan Neal and concussion protocol. So again, keep a close eye on that, and of course we're going to continue to update you on that and everything else regarding the New York Giants right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, we will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
TVSO.